Chapter 233 Lei Wan. As it stood, this was the second cultivator whom Han Li had eliminated after his primordial spirit abandoned his body. Within battles, most cultivators wouldn't separate their primordial spirit from their body as it required a certain amount of time to perform. During this period of time, one could not move about freely. During a battle between cultivators, who would give their enemy enough time to escape? Long before one would have the time to separate their primordial spirit from their body, they would have already died more than 10 times. Furthermore, only those in the nascent soul stage or later would be able to separate their primordial spirit from their body in an instant with the help of their nascent soul. This senior martial brother Lin was just as unfortunate as that Yu Tong. He originally thought to pass through the location of Han Li's Immortal's cave and head straight to Yellow Maple Valley for treatment and protection. However, he accidentally burst into Han Li's great formation and was completely trapped in the shifting illusions of the formation, unable to escape in the slightest. He helplessly looked on as the poison spread through his body and could only detach his primordial spirit from its corporeal vessel. This also caused senior martial brother Lin to hold resentment towards the Great Formation's master. Because he required a flesh body to be revived and assumed Han Li to be his killer, he thought to seize Han Li's body regardless of the consequences. However, he didn't think in the least that Han Li would be so swift that he could stop senior martial brother Lin's primordial spirit even after being caught off guard and exterminate him. Now that this person was already dead, Han Li naturally didn't think about the dead man's words in the slightest. He now had to deal with the great problem that was lying outside of his immortal's cave. Although the attacks of the 1,000 Bamboo School were frightening, Han Li didn't see a single trace of damage on his great formation, putting him at great ease. Furthermore, he was confident that these people wouldn't dare to stay here too long. Although this place was remote and could be considered the outskirts of the Taiyue mountain range, it was still an area within Yellow Maple Valley's influence. After performing such loud movements, Han Li did not believe that they weren't afraid of the consequences. He reckoned that even though their current attacks weren't effective against the Great Formation, they had already reached the stage where it was hard to stop halfway. Actually, Han Li wasn't against the idea of handing over senior martial brother Lin's corpse to send them on their way. However, the trace of one's primordial spirit leaving their body was far too obvious. When they acquire the body, they would only pursue the matter even further. Thus it would be better to make like an ostrich and hide within the Great Formation. In any case, the other party couldn't break through this 5 elements reversal formation. With this said, Han Li could only praise himself. He actually had such foresight to set up his great formation at the very first chance. Otherwise, he would certainly have become their prisoner without the slightest of resistance. However, although there currently appeared to be no problem with the Great Formation, Han Li didn't dare to return to his immortal's cave and sleep. He simply took a stone chair out from his home and sat down and rested his eyes. Since these people used puppets to attack, Han Li was somewhat worried about a persistent attack. After a whole 2 hours of indiscriminate attacks, the Great Formation finally showed the first sign of change. The formation that was originally as peaceful as water began to flicker with dim azure light. The formation covering the sky began to ripple like water from the light arrow and light beam attacks coming from above. Seeing this, those from the 1,000 Bamboo School began to grow excited. After all, seeing this kind of change meant that the formation could be destroyed by force. With more strength, it was possible to burst the formation open. In truth, if the barrier maintained its originally peaceful appearance, Huang Long and company would have decided to retreat. Just as the 1,000 Bamboo School planned an even greater offensive and Han Li's expression slightly changed, a thunderous roar came from the distance. You dare to cause such ruckus in the Taiyue mountain range and even dare to attack our sect disciples' Immortal's cave? Since you are tired of living, this old man will send you off. This roar left Han Li, who was protected by the Great Formation, with his ears ringing and with a pale complexion, not to mention those outside of the formation. Having directly heard the roar, they were swaying side to side, nearly falling off their boat. It's a core formation cultivator. quickly retreat. Although Huang Long seemed to be the crude and ferocious sort, he was actually the shrewdest among them. Thus, after he heard this person's voice contain such power, his face lost color, and he immediately wanted to escape. But it was clear that Huang Long had underestimated the flight speed and the immeasurable magic power of a core formation cultivator. Just as those several people were putting away their puppets in a panic and intending to escape, thunder and lightning suddenly appeared on the horizon. White light flew across the sky, closely followed by a strand of silver light. In a blink of an eye, it arrived in front of them, scaring them so much that their spirits nearly left their body. They were unable to retrieve the remaining puppets and instead jumped up to escape individually. However, the huge streak of silver light that spanned over 30 meters simply didn't give Huang Long and company any chance. The streak of light suddenly separated into 6 or 7 smaller silver light streaks, surrounding those from the Thousand Bamboo School, all of whom were already in mid-flight. "Senior, please spare our lives. Huang Long grew terrified, and he hastily wanted to say something. However, these silver lights didn't stop in the slightest. They lightly coiled around them. Then after several soft thunderclaps, these people who were vainly trying to escape had all turned to ash. Huang Long did not have the fortune to escape this end. At this moment, all of the silver lights converged into one, revealing a very large fatty. All that was seen of his eyes were 2 slits. His chins were folded with many layers, it was unknown how many there truly were. In addition, his waist was as thick as a barrel. This was undoubtedly the fattest person Han Li had seen in his lifetime. But it was this very person who was able to become a core formation cultivator. Furthermore, from the techniques he used, it seemed that he had lightning attribute mutated spiritual roots. This caused Han Li to be greatly shocked. Regardless of the newcomer's appearance, this person did break Han Li's encirclement. Furthermore, this person was an elder from Yellow Maple Valley. As a result, after Han Li witnessed the extermination of the fellows from Thousand Bamboo School, Han Li opened his great formation without the slightest of hesitation and hastily flew up on a magic tool to greet him. When he was in front of the fatty, Han Li respectfully saluted him. Martial nephew Han Li pay his respects to Martial Senior. Great thanks to this Martial Senior's assistance. If it weren't for Martial Senior, my life may not have been guaranteed. Ever since Han Li was flying up, the fatty had been sizing up Han Li with his eye slits. When he saw Han Li respectfully greet him, his huge face revealed a slight smile. It seemed he had a pretty good first impression toward Han Li. "I am your Martial Senior, Lei Wan. You can call me Martial Senior Lei. How could these people from the Thousand Bamboo School attack you without cause? Could it be that you provoked them?" The fatty dove straight to the heart of the matter. It could clearly be seen that this Martial Senior Lei was a shrewd person who wasn't easily fooled. Han Li inwardly shivered, but with his expression remained calm as always. He gave this Martial Senior an explanation while omitting some unnecessary details. Naturally, Han Li did not mention his affairs at the Heavenly Star Sex Market City or his extermination of Senior Martial Brother Lin's primordial spirit. Lei Wan remained calm throughout the explanation, but when he heard that Senior Martial Brother Lin had died from poison while inside the formation, he said, "So he turned out to be a fellow from the Thousand Bamboo School. I knew when we took him into Yellow Maple Valley that this person would certainly bring trouble. However, I didn't think that after so many years, there would still be people sent to kill him. That great schoolmaster Jin's mindset is quite narrow." This Martial Senior Lei Wan didn't reveal any sorrow. After a light sigh, he asked, "Where is Martial Nephew Lin's corpse? Lead me to it." "As you wish. Martial Senior, this way." How could Han Li dare to refuse? He hastily led him into his great formation. As Han Li walked, he was inwardly rejoicing. Fortunately, since he had been busy with those from the Thousand Bamboo School, he didn't touch the storage pouch on Senior Martial Lin's body. Otherwise, the situation would become unsightly. "Yi. This great formation of yours is rather unusual. It seems that even if I didn't come, those scoundrels still wouldn't have been able to do anything to you. Not long after Lei Wan entered the 5 elements reversal formation, he made out a few of its intricacies. These are merely high-grade formation flags that I exchanged for quite a bit of money from the market city. How could they enter Marshal Senior's eyes? When Han Li heard the fatty's praise, he could not help but rejoice inwardly, but he still spoke quite modestly. No, this formation spell of yours has a great origin. Even if I were to try to break through this formation without using any tricks, it would be quite difficult to break through. Lei Wan shook his head as if he were beating a drum with it, continuously disagreeing. At this moment, the two had arrived. Senior Marshal Brother Lin's corpse was openly lying on his body, completely intact. When the fatty saw this, he waved a pair of fans in his hands. The corpse immediately flew to the pair of palm leaf fans. Lei Wan then examined the body without restraint. It seems what you said was true. The Far East's venomous poison sex poison has spread throughout his body. After the fatty finished his inspection, he nodded his head, but his following words caused Han Li to inwardly shiver. However, before his body had completely decayed, his primordial spirit should have left his body. Perhaps Marshal Nephew Han Li has seen it. The fatty threw the corpse onto the ground and calmly asked Han Li,